All right. Hello and welcome everyone to a recording of Modern SEO Tips for Growing Brands. So unfortunately for you, all of you that logged in with me just a few minutes ago, the Webinar Ninja crashed. Unfortunately, webinar software kind of has a bit of that reputation. Nonetheless, this will be a recording and I will include a mechanism for everyone to ask questions. I want to make sure that everyone is able to get something out of this which is the whole reason you signed up, is hoping that I could help you with your organic traffic. And that's the entire idea today. So I'm going to share my screen now and hop in and kind of walk you through step by step some things that you can do to increase your organic web traffic. All right. So I am from Bloomly. This is going to be mainly a coverage of how you can do some things as it relates to modern SEO to improve your organic reach. So acquiring more and more of your core audience through organic web search, mainly Google. So who is this guy and why should I listen to anything he has to say? Well, I'm an award-winning marketer and a national speaker on the marketing SEO circuit. I've served as an SEO expert for startup boards and startup competitions. I've helped hundreds of sites exponentially increase their organic traffic. And I myself am also a blogger. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. My wife and I run a Jiu-Jitsu blog and several health blogs. And we are very different in that respect. And I'm going to use that as an example throughout today. Right now, I'm going through something that is not a lot of fun. I'm moving. So this is like my worst nightmares. Lots and lots of boxes everywhere. This is the challenge of a long, difficult task ahead. Is that getting started part? It seems really daunting in some ways. This is what I would like to do. I'd like to just grab all my stuff, strap it to the top of a car, and just drive it to the next location. That seems efficient to me. Unfortunately, it's really not the best way to move. But if you're like me, you probably have that feeling once you finally get moved in and all the boxes put away. This is the best feeling in the world. This is so great. Because moving is just absolutely the worst. And I think one of the things that I want to identify here is that I think a lot of times projects relating to the words SEO or organic traffic, people's eyes glaze over and they just think any efforts that I put forth here are going to be long, arduous, hard. It's going to be hard to understand whether or not they're actually working or not. And it's going to take a really long time. So it's very difficult to get started in some cases. And the world of SEO doesn't help with that either. You've got, I'm sure if you're like me, you get lots and lots of emails from unscrupulous characters sending you emails telling you that they can get you in the #1 ranking in Google, and even more clever schemes than that. And then you've got the world of SEO news, which is filled with conspiracy theories and subjective data. And I want to tell you that the actual world of SEO is actually a little bit more complicated than that. But it doesn't have to look like this, which is, I don't even like looking at this. It looks overly complex. This is really how the world of SEO actually operates from an objective standpoint. Real data. These are the things that we can measure and understand. But it's nice to put this stuff into plain language, into things that you can actually do. And that's what we're going to do today. I've spent a lot of time working with my wife to help her with these things. My wife could care less about SEO. It's her least favorite thing on the planet. And so I always think, what types of things can I show her that are extremely high impact, that won't cause her to feel like she's having to learn something overly technical or complex, or even just something that's not fun. She loves creating content. And so this sort of thing isn't always that fun for her. So how do I create advice that will work for both her and then also the folks that have joined us today that maybe are a little bit more advanced, that do follow a lot of the SEO news and modern changes and things along those lines. So I've created something here today that I think will work for everyone, big, small. It doesn't matter if you're using WordPress or using Squarespace or you're custom built your site in PHP, all different types of niche topics. And then anyone that may be growing or even declining in the traffic. This will work for everyone. And so we're going to really focus on today making your existing content rank higher. Sounds great, right? The images on the right are websites that I own or have worked on here recently and sold. And primarily, you can see all of these blogs that I have here are growing exponentially in traffic. This is what we want. The techniques that I'm going to show you today, I've used for over a year on dozens and dozens of different sites. All the sites saw traffic increase by at least 50%. One was 2,000. It doesn't involve deleting or changing your existing content, and it takes advantage of a lot of existing Google modernalities, if you will. The modernalities may not actually be a word. So what else is really nice about this is I've actually, we had a blog that I was, a friend of mine, they run a college blog, and she was experiencing some major declines in her organic traffic. And we actually started doing some of these things, and she was able to see her traffic jump right back up. So this is something that can actually stall a lot of the maybe rankings declines that I know a lot of bloggers saw starting in March and April. This is going to be a strategy that is content and visitor focused. So I'm not going to make you do any backlinking or awful outreach to people asking them to link to your content. We're not going to delete or change anything. I'm not going to make you do any complex math. And we're going to take advantage of the knowledge that everyone here already has, which is the ability to produce good content, which I think is probably this. I'm probably done selling at this point. You're saying, Tyler, tell me how to do these things. So I just want to let you know we're going to go really fast through some of this stuff, but don't worry because it's recorded. Previously, I would have said you're getting the recording, but now it's already recorded, so you guys can slow this down and view it however you like. And also, previously, I was going to do a Q&A after this, but now I have included a link to a Facebook community that will be closed to all of us where I can interact with everyone, and you guys can have as much of my time as possible, and I will interact with you in that group, and the link to that will be at the end of this webinar. So let's take a live look. Let's hop into something really quick. So I mentioned before that we were going to be augmenting existing content, or at least we'd be focusing on it. And so what we're going to do today is I'm going to do a lot of the work and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about inside of SEMrush. So there are multiple tools that essentially do the same thing. There's Moz, there's Ahrefs, there's a whole host of these SEO keyword tools. But we're going to use SEMrush today. And if you're saying to yourself, well, is it free? Which ones are free? If you want to do it using SEMrush, you can do a 14-day trial for free. And all you'll need is the free trial to do what I'm explaining today. So you can use the exact tool that I'm showing you today and use it in a free trial and then just be done with it. And if, obviously if it's very impactful, maybe it's something you want to invest in the future, but nevertheless, you can use the free trial to do everything we're talking about today. So I've entered in my website up here. I own a site called Injury Health Blog. It's a blog that I write about all the different injuries that I've had throughout my life. And I'm going to go over after I've entered it in here, and I'm going to click on organic research. And as this loads up, you can see here, I've got all these different keywords that my blog ranks for. I've got all my rankings over here, the volume, which means the amount of traffic that these are getting over the course of a certain period of time. And so I can see all these different sorts of material. But what I'm really interested in right now is I'm really interested in the fact that the pieces of content that I have that are ranking for keywords that are sitting atop the search results are probably the ones that are generating the most traffic. When stuff sits on page 2 or page 3 of Google search results, it gets very, very few clicks. So what I would like to know is what content of mine is nearly ranking on page 1 and getting lots of traffic, but it's not quite there yet. And what we found over time with this is that there is a lot of content that is likely living on your site ranking for high volume keywords that you probably don't even know about. Accidental keywords. You may have written an article about one thing and found out that it ranks for something totally different, but that totally different thing could contain a lot of really great traffic. So today we're going to really focus on how do we identify what those are, and then what can we maybe do to those articles to move on to page one and get some of that really good traffic. So I'm going to run some filters here. So you see I've added 3 filters here. This will be different for everyone, but I'm going to look for, I want the keyword volume to be more than, let's see, 40. I want it to get more than 40 searches. So I don't want it to, I want to make sure it's worth my time. Everyone's going to have a different number here. If you get, hundreds of thousands of page views every month, you may want to say, well, it's not worth it to me to focus on any articles that may not be able to generate more than, 100 or 500 visits per month or something like that. But in my case, I'm just going to put 40 here, and then I'm going to select position here in both my filters, and I'm going to do greater than 10. So definitely not on page one if I'm ranking higher than 10, but then also less than 20. So I don't want the stuff that's ranking way back at number 80. I want the stuff that's ranking almost on page one, but not quite. So let's apply these. So now I can see I've got quite a bit of content here that's not ranking on page one, but it's almost there. You can see I've got some stuff at 11, 12, just all between 10 and 20 here. And I found this one earlier, MCL rehab. So I've written an article here recently about MCL injuries, and now I can see I rank number 17 for MCL rehab, and it gets a decent amount of traffic every month. And so I'd like to be able to nab that traffic. And so I'm going to go in now and take a look at that article. And I can see here I wrote an article on MCL sprain recovery time and treatment protocol. And I can go through here. And I know I'm going through fast, but I promise it's for the sake of time. But what you can see here is that I wrote very little. So all I have about MCL sprain rehab in here is here. And so I'm ranking for an article that I'm sure that other people that have written about MCL sprain rehab or MCL rehab, I mean, this is just sprain rehab, it's not even MCL rehab, have probably gone into a lot more depth than I have here. And so what I can do now is I can say, all right, I'm almost ranking for this keyword on page one. What if I added some additional content to this to make it more relevant to the people that are searching for that? One of the things that Google will look at when it starts ranking content is it'll look at user experience metrics like time on site, the bounce rate, page views per visit. And these types of things will tell the search engine that essentially the searcher is happy with the results, that this is good content. And so if someone's searching for MCL rehab and all they get is a paragraph, their time on site, page views per visit, and the chances of them clicking back and going back to the search result and clicking on a different one are probably pretty good. So I can actually fix that myself. I can go in here and as I mentioned before, I'm going to do what I do best, which is create good content. But before I do, I'm actually going to take the slug. So it's just this back half of the URL here. And I actually want to see if I'm going to fix this article and add some content to it. Maybe I've got some other articles that it ranks for that I could fix at the same time. So now I've put in that URL in here, and I want to see what other keywords does this article rank for between 10 and 20. And there is a lot here. So you can see this article that I have about MCL injuries has a whole bunch of keywords that I'm ranking just off of page one. Now, in this case, I just want to augment the part about rehab. I realize that I have not covered that piece of it very much here. And so now I'm just going to say, give me the keywords that contain the word rehab that are on this URL between 10 and 20 and apply. And I can see that there's a number of keywords here about MCL rehab that I have not really addressed in the article, but I'm almost ranking on page one for. So that's a lot of traffic that I could go and get here just by making my content a little bit better. So I want to make sure that we think about things in a certain way here. I don't want us to think all we're trying to do here is grab some keywords and stuff them into an article. That's the exact opposite of what I want to do right now. What I want to do is look at the fact that I have written a very shallow article as it relates to MCL rehab, yet my blog here on MCL injuries is so good that I'm actually ranking on page two for this keyword. Now, if I'm going to augment this and make it better, I should see what other keywords are people actually coming to my site looking for answers for that I'm not currently providing. So MCL rehab program, protocol, strain protocol. So I can see they're basically looking for answers about MCL rehab programs, protocols, and processes. So as I augment my content here, that is what I'm going to want to focus on. So I've actually written a piece already here that we can see. So I've written a brand new article, a section for this article. I'm not going to change any of my existing content. What I'm going to do is insert this new piece of content into my existing article. And so I can see here, I've got a brand new H2 heading with my keyword in it. What is the average MCL sprain rehab time, or even maybe MCL rehab time? There's a difference between MCL recovery time and MCL sprain rehab time. And I go through and I even talk about grade 1 rehab, grade 2, grade 3. I talk about protocols. And then I even show some exercises that are good for MCL rehab, because it seemed like people were interested in those sorts of things. And you can see I'm going to add some alt tags here as well. So I'm augmenting my existing content and making it much better for the people that are searching these keywords. So now I'm going to go ahead and capture a portion of this and show us how to input it. So I'm going to hop into my WordPress backend here. So here's my section that was a little bit light before. So after I, give some caveats on whether or not somebody should actually do the rehab, I'm going to actually give them my new content here. And you can see I've got to fix a couple little formatting things because I'm pasting over from a doc. You can see my H2 stuff isn't showing up here, so I don't need those tags in this view. So I can just go ahead and make it an H2 right here. When I'm augmenting content, H2s give me a good way of being able to show, hey, this is what this section is about. That's kind of what it's signaling both to the end user. This is what I want my visitors to see, but then also Google as well and other search engines. But this is a great way to think about how we augment content. How can I chunk together new sections of existing articles that are going to maybe answer some questions that exist as it relates to some of the keywords that maybe I'm not quite ranking on page 1 for. So you can see I've got my new content inside of here now. I've expanded. I've probably quadrupled my word count here on this particular topic. I would imagine that people will spend more time reading it now if that's something they're searching in. When I go in and start adding images to this, you can see here one of my images. I want to add some alt text here. And this will tell Google that I have images on my site relating to this specific topic. All right. So now I've added this article. I've augmented it. One of the things I can do as well is you can see here originally inside of Yoast, I've actually already entered this in. I'm actually really well optimized for MCL sprain. It's not updating right now. There we go. So you can see here, this is the main keyword that I had augmented this or originally written this article for. But now if I put in MCL rehab, you can see there are potentially some things missing, but most of this stuff I'm okay with. I don't want to change my meta descriptions. I don't know that I want to work this into the first paragraph of the title. But there are some things as well where I could go in and enter in these keywords if you use Yoast as an SEO tool, which I highly recommend you do if you're a WordPress user. And I can actually throw in my new keywords here and kind of go through this wizard here a little bit to figure out maybe some other opportunities that may exist for those keywords too. So that being said, let's pretend now that I'm done. I'm happy with the way that I've augmented this piece of content. And now, what I would like to do is actually shave down some of the time that I may have to wait for Google to realize that my content is different and maybe start ranking it differently. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll go into Google Search Console. So I'm going to log into one of my other accounts here where I actually have Injury Health blog posted. I go into my search console here. And I can see Injury Health blog right here. And so what I want to do now is make Google crawl this. So I've got this new, I'm going to take my slug once again from my URL, and I go into Search Console. If you haven't set this up, it's very simple. I highly recommend it. All you have to do is connect it to your Google Analytics, and Google will help you get it all set up here. And I can go in here and say crawl, fetches Google, and then I just put the backend piece of this URL in here and say fetch. And Google will go out and find that URL. It says redirected, actually. Oh, I was missing my little slash there at the end, I think. There we go. And so it says complete, and then I can say request indexing. So what this will do is Google will recrawl that piece of content and then index it in search results. And that way I don't have to wait as long for maybe Google to recrawl that piece of content. Another good way to start kind of making it rank higher is actually sending some traffic that way. You can do this by maybe sharing on a social media account as well. It'll be a way for Google to start recording that maybe visitors are spending a little bit longer on that article than they were previously, mainly because you've added additional content. And so that's one of the things you can do to augment your existing content and improve your organic search traffic. Now, that's not all. Usually I would end right there and say that's enough information. That's enough to keep everyone, I think, here probably busy for a while. And as I mentioned before, you can do that all for free using SEMrush. It's a very easy content-driven way to do it. You don't have to do any backlinks or anything technical. You're literally just going to use those tools to figure out objectively what content could use augmenting and how, and then you're going to go in and write good content that's associated with that. But I want to show you a couple other little tricks, things that pop up a lot of times when I show this strategy off. So I've realized over time that people are missing a really simple way to make their sites faster, something that I hear a lot. I'm worried about the speed of my site, this and that. And there's kind of a blind spot that I think a lot of bloggers have, and that is image size. Image sizes are too big and are often slowing down sites. So this is actually one of the only things that I use Google page speed tools for. So if you've ever, wanted to see how fast your site was, you probably found Google's page speed tools, which is actually not a very good tool for figuring out how fast your site really is. I won't go in that today, but I really like using the tool to figure out if a site has images that on average are too big or too small. And you can see here, I can get exact examples here of some images that could be smaller. So if you run that report on your site and you see that you've got that probably means across the board your images are too big on your site. It's a really, really common problem. If you've manually ensured all your images on your site have been resized and compressed, so if you've physically gone into Photoshop or another tool and made your images a different size than they were than when you downloaded them or got them for wherever, and then compressed them, two separate things, then you can skip this part. If you don't resize your images or compress them manually, like you use a WordPress plugin, for example, what I'm about to talk about is for you. And you can see here, both of those images, they look nearly identical. So you can compress and resize an image, and it can have almost no effect on the quality of it. WordPress plugins are not your friend when it comes to image resizing. Unfortunately, this is the big blind spot that I think a lot of bloggers have, which is they think that because they have this WordPress plugin and that it's doing some form of compression, that at the end of the day, that's as small as an image can get, and they can kind of set it and forget it. Unfortunately, this isn't true. Pretty much every website that I've ever seen that relied on a WordPress plugin for their image compression did a very bad job of compressing images, and those images were usually way too big. So I'm going to make this really, really applicable. First, I'm going to tell you the rules to follow, and then I'm going to show you how to do it. So 3 really simple rules, in my opinion. And once you know the rules, you can always break the rules. I recommend keeping the size of all images on a page under 100 kilobytes. So every individual image under 100 kilobytes. So I've got a big image on the page. It's 99. It's good. It's 150. I can probably make it smaller. Most images you can actually get below 50 kilobytes. It just depends. If you're a photo blogger, food blogger, it may make sense to try to keep the resolution, et cetera, as high as possible. But as I mentioned before, you can actually compress images a lot. And there's a difference between compressing them and downsampling them. So we'll go into that here in a second. So there's no need for an image to be wider than 1,000 pixels. And this is like the big crux of a lot of this stuff. So most of your visitors are likely on mobile, in which case mobile screens are no longer, they're just not 650 pixels wide, even the largest screens. And so if your visitors are looking at a screen that's 650 pixels wide, but you're showing them a 1,000 pixel image that's then being resized retroactively by the browser, by your site or your CMS, you're basically giving somebody an image that's way too big, both size and bit size, for no reason. And so it's really easy to resize and scale all your images. I recommend them all being under 1,000 pixels wide. And so I would recommend that, you really think through the different pieces of content that you have and think, does this need to be 1,000 pixels wide on a desktop for someone to enjoy it? Or can I resize this thing and make it a little bit more compact, especially if you get the majority of your visitors from mobile? You may want to mark that as 650. And then start with your top landing pages. So as you go and start to fix these things, think about the process we just went through. Shrink the images on the pages you're trying to get rank higher, and then any pages where maybe you're ranking 4th or 5th in results, maybe resizing your images might be enough to make your pages load faster and make the experience better for your visitors as well. So how do you do that in an easy way? Follow those rules that I just mentioned. And then if you have Photoshop, it's pretty simple. You resize and compress using Photoshop. So to resize, you just go to image and then resize, and then you can just use the link mark to basically change the width to anything under 1,000, and it'll automatically resize the image. And then you go to File, Export, and then Save for Web Legacy, and you can keep the entire resolution of the image completely intact this way, and it will compress it usually under 100 kilobytes if it's less than 1,000 pixels wide. If you don't have Photoshop, there's a free tool I really like called Optimizilla. And I send these guys tons and tons of visitors, and I'm not sure that they ever know it, but I love the tool. It's a great compression tool. All you have to do is upload your image to it. It compresses it, and then you download it right back. Super simple. You can still resize your tool and any number of free resizing tools out there if the image is too wide or too big. But Optimizilla does a really great job of compressing it. And then if you're a WordPress user, if you are replacing a lot of images that are too big, I would consider using the Replace Image plugin. That's its exact name, Replace Image. And basically the way that it works is when you go into your, here, I'll see, I may have it on my blog here. When I click on an image, and I don't, what it'll do is there'll be a spot here where it'll say replace image when you go into your media, and you can actually just replace that image. So your alt tags, the image location, the image URL, all that stuff stays intact. So it literally just swaps the images out as opposed to having to you physically re-upload a new image, go into your article, chop it out, and put the new one in. This one will just replace it wherever it is on the site, which is a good deal. Saves you some time. So that's how you do it. So what should you do in the next 30 days? Well, use a tool to find low-hanging fruit, high volume keywords outside of page 1, but higher than 20 or 30. You basically, but you really don't want it to be higher than 30. I think that's what I should say. But essentially, you want to find the stuff that's on page 2 and 3 that you currently rank for. but maybe didn't necessarily write content to rank for those keywords. And so now you can go back and augment your existing articles to make them better. Include things like H2s, new images, write just new good content targeted at those queries or keywords. Find out what other opportunities exist for those keywords. So, I threw my URL in there and I threw the term rehab in there, and I was able to see like, hey, there's actually quite a bit of other stuff that people are searching for on this exact URL. So if I'm going to add and augment my content, let's make it worth my time and make sure that I can kill as many birds with as many stones as I've got. And then I can use image optimization tips that we just talked about to improve speed, both on those existing articles, but just across the site wide. Those are just good best practices that I find a lot of people are missing. So I mentioned that I wished that I could have done some Q&A with everyone, but unfortunately, the Webinar Ninja Gods just would not have it today. So I want to encourage you to join this Facebook group. I just created it. It's called Bloomly Community. It's an external group for all of us, basically just to hop in and to discuss everything that we just talked about. If you have questions for me about how something works, or just questions about SEO in general, something particular with your site, I'm happy to jump into the group and answer any questions. I kind of feel bad that we had to record this. One of the areas that I feel like I thrive the best in is Q&A. So if you have questions, please hop into the Bloomly community and I will answer all your questions. And that's it. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I'm Tyler Bishop. I'm with Bloomly. I'm hoping that I'll have a chance to meet all of you at some point. We go to a lot of blogger conferences. We've got set to be at the International Food Bloggers Conference, Tech Munch, Alt, Inspire, FinCon. There's a whole host of other ones. But if you're at any of these conferences this year, I hope that we'll have a chance to meet in person. And if this was helpful to you, please let me know. Thank you very much. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of the week.